A lot of national attention is focused now on the legal effort to try to stop a transgender student athlete from wrestling on the girls' team. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. Trinity High School junior Mac Beggs is headed to the state wrestling tournament after dominating the girls' 110-pound weight class.
But Beggs, who is transitioning to a boy, is the subject of a lawsuit against the University Interscholastic League to prevent Beggs from going to the mat with girls. Fox 4's Brandon Todd is at the school in Euless tonight with more. Brandon.
Well, Heather, Steve, a transgender advocate told me that he and his group, along with Equality Texas, told the UIL a long time ago that they were going to have some issues with its policies regarding transgender students in sports. And he says this lawsuit surrounding Mac Beggs is not a surprise.
It's not the students' problem. It's UIL's problem.
Transgender advocates like Finnegan Jones are watching the case of Mac Beggs, seen here in a Facebook video, very closely. A junior on the Trinity High School girls wrestling team, Beggs is undefeated and headed to state championships this weekend.
Recently, there's been a lot of controversy over what former tennis player Martina Navratilova said about biological men competing against the biological women in sports. Some even accused her of, quote, dehumanizing trans people. Navratilova was removed from the advisory board of Athlete Ally, a group that is advocating for LGBT concerns in sport. This was the response from the Athlete Ally group. First of all, trans women are women, period. They did not decide their gender identity any more than someone decides to be gay or to have blue eyes. But we all know that this is not the truth. You can't just change your gender whenever you want to. If you're born male, you stay male for your entire life. Or if you are born female, you stay female for your entire life. This is just simple biology. But the left doesn't care about science. You can hear from them that there are who knows how many genders. You can hear from them that there is no such thing as biological sex, that you can change your sex with one operation, and simple as that, you can become a man or a female. But this is, of course, not true. Biology is not on their side. Science is not on their side. And now we can see that in sport events where biological man pretending to be a female athlete can compete with other women athletes, and difference is more than obvious. Because of course men on average are much more strong and masculine than women. There's nothing sexist about it. But if it was up to the leftist, we should just ignore all facts and pretend that biological men can equally compete with women in sports. Because there's no such thing as gender. We saw this in the past, where there was a transgender wrestler that was competing with girls in a Texas high school wrestling competition. And of course none of the girls could defeat him, because of course biology matters. And he is a man who is much more masculine than the girls he is competing with. Also, it's important to say that Martina Navratilova is one of the most famous LGBT activists from the West, so she does care about the issues of the LGBT community around the world. But now she is getting attacked because she doesn't want to go along with this nonsense about transgender athletes competing with regular athletes. But we know the leftists don't care about the science, while they accuse Republicans of being anti-science because they don't want to believe that humanity will die in 12 years to global warming. Now, let's take a look at Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan discussing this story about Martina Navratilova and what they have to say about this issue.
Second year in a row, so it's a trend. In the women's events, the standout performers were two biological males.
Drea Yearwood says even as a child, she identified as a girl. Yearwood is a sophomore at Cromwell High School. Born a boy, she's now transitioning and runs track and field on the girls' team. She and Bulkley High School sophomore Terry Miller swept the competition at the girls' track and field state championships last week. Miller is also transgender. Some parents and athletes say the first and second place finishers have an unfair advantage, and they want a level playing field.
This is an increasingly common story. The U.S. has long been a global leader in giving sporting opportunities to women, but now biological males are increasingly intruding on that space. Some women object, but those who say so out loud find themselves punished. Even tennis legend Martina Navratilova has been. She was just kicked out of a gay rights group for objecting to the transgender takeover of women's sports. Lesbian activist Julia Beck suffered a similar fate, as she described on this show recently.
In many states, men can legally identify themselves as female and gain access to women's single-sex spaces. And sports is just one institution where men are taking titles, scholarships, and this is a problem. Many women like myself have been pushed out of spaces that we built, spaces that are intended to include us, simply because we acknowledge biological reality.
Piers Morgan is an editor-at-large for DailyMail.com, and we're proud to have him tonight. Piers, you're not allowed to say that you're against this. Martina Navratilova, if anyone you'd think would have license to give her opinion on women's sports, and she can't, she was punished. What is your view of this?
Well, I'm with Martina Navratilova, and I think the way she's been treated is extremely worrying, Tucker, because all she said, and bearing in mind, she's probably one of the leading advocates for gay rights that America has ever seen.
Yes.
She's somebody who herself employed Renee Richards, who was a transgender. She was the first major transgender coach. Who employed her? Martina Navratilova. So this is a woman who's been at the forefront of fighting for rights for gay people and transgender people. But here's the rub with this. Martina's always taken a position that what she wants is fairness and equality. And in her column she wrote last week for a London newspaper, she made the very, I think, obvious point, which is there's nothing fair or equal about what is now going on in women's sport. If you allow people who were born biologically male, and I completely accept that transgender people say, look, you know, I was in the wrong gender, the wrong body, I want to transition, I completely respect that, I have no issue with that. And it's not bigoted, by the way, to say that you have an issue with what's going on with the sport, as some of them like to claim. But here's what Martina said. She said, look, you could have a situation where a male athlete in tennis or golf or one of the sports that relies a lot on perhaps power and size, a male athlete who's maybe number 200 in the world and earning not much money, that he might decide he wants to be a woman purely for financial gain, that he can then just have some hormone treatment, doesn't need to have any surgery, and he can then take part in women's sport, win vast amounts of money, and perhaps after 2 or 3 years simply go back and be a man again. And that would be a corrupt thing to do. It would be the wrong thing to do, unethical and, frankly, cheating, as Martina says. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And that's what really worries me about this. They haven't thought this through about what the consequence will be if you simply allow anybody to identify as male or female.
What I'm confused by is why they shut down the conversation over the details, which are the most important part, as you just suggest. What does it mean to change biological genders? What is the threshold? Saying you're changing, clearly that can't be a standard we can live with. So what is the standard? If you even ask that question, you are shouted down. And in the case of Navratilova, you're punished.
Well, she was thrown off a charity, which she was a big advocate for. She's been vilified on social media to the extent that she basically silenced herself and said, I'm taking myself out of this debate. She's now indicated she may talk about this again later this week, perhaps. And I hope she does. I hope she doesn't back down and doesn't succumb to the mob on this, because it's not transphobic to express a concern about what is going on in women's sports. In fact, what it is unfair and unequal to young women, to girls who've been competing at a certain level and maybe have great aspirations to win sporting scholarships or turn professional, who are now seeing themselves coming down the line, down the ladder, down the rung, and disadvantaged purely through biology, because they're physically not able to compete with these young transgender women who, as we can see from that picture, are tall and powerful and have grown up in male biological bodies. And that's an issue that I think ought to be discussed rationally and calmly. I would urge transgender communities in America and around the world to be sensible about this and say, okay, there is an issue here, and we need to address that issue without vilifying anyone, particularly supporters like Martina Navratilova, because that doesn't get anybody anywhere.
I mean, it's bullying, really, is what they're engaged in. It's not enough, it sounds like, to say, I want to stand up for the rights of women and girls. It used to be, that was a conversation ender. I'm here on behalf of women and girls. Listen to me. Now, nobody cares. Why?
Well, you know, Tucker, I had an interesting conversation with Caitlyn Jenner, who, of course, as Bruce Jenner, was the Olympic decathlete gold medal winner at the Olympics for America, and is now Caitlyn Jenner, a woman. And she told me that when she plays golf now, bearing in mind she's 2 inches taller than me, and I'm 6'1". She's 6'3", I think, Caitlyn Jenner, and powerfully built. She plays golf. And when she plays golf now, she now plays off the women's tees. Now, if you play golf, you know that means she gets a 50-yard or so advantage on every hole if she plays me. And yet this is somebody who won the male decathlon gold medal at the Olympics. And I said to Caitlin, well, how can that be fair? And she kind of acknowledged that it gave her an unfair advantage if she played against other women in particular, or against men as well, frankly. So it's just an unfairness and inequality is what my concern is. It's not about disrespecting transgender rights.
No,
it's
of course,
about
no, I get
saying
it.
to transgender people, come on, it's not fair.
It's a very smart point. In the name of equality, we make things less equal. In the name of fairness, they become profoundly unfair. Piers Morgan, everything you said was common sense, and it's brave of you to say it, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, we're going to, you know what, Tucker, we're going to get attacked just for having the debate. And that is also one of the major problems with this. You know, we know we are, right?
Already, luckily, I don't care.
We're probably trending already. I don't care either. We're probably trending already for just having a debate about this. You're running a little banner there.
Piers
Morgan,
we got to go to
Hannity.
He's in. Thanks, Piers.